and I'm sure we have a lot to learn from them.
Trade has long had tremendous potential as an engine of sustained economic growth and development. Today, trade can and must be part of our efforts to stimulate recovery. That is why last month, United Nations Conference on the World Financial and Economic Crisis and its impact on development urged countries to meet existing pledges on aid for trade.
Let me also be very candid. The global trading environment has worsened dramatically since our first review. Global trade growth of 6% in 2007, which is last time we met, has been replaced by a projected 10% contraction in 2009. And it's one of the biggest challenges that the multilateral trading system has faced since its inception. And as we all know, this crisis has a human face. Poverty alleviation targets, whether are part of the MDGs or otherwise, have become more challenging because of, among things, the decline in export demand for goods. When the recovery will begin is anyone's guess, but for everyone concerned, it's clear that it can't come too quickly. And on this, one point is clear. If aid for trade was urgent in 2007, it has become essential today. It is the investment that will allow many developing countries prepared to exit the crisis by enhancing their trade capacity.
We believe this initiative can make a real contribution to our common objective of a more inclusive and environmentally sustainable world economy. The OECD will continue to work closely with the WTO to monitor aid for trade. We will collect and synthesize good practices that will help us focus aid for trade on delivering results. We'll also design a common evaluation framework to assess the aid for trade outcomes and impacts in terms of trade capacities, poverty reduction, and environmental sustainability.
Trade was one of the first sectors that was decimated by contracting consumption in high-income countries. But it'll also be one of the first sectors to recover once the global economy picks up steam. Those countries that position themselves now to take advantage of renewed trade will accelerate out of the recession with the fastest momentum. And all of this means that your efforts at promoting aid for trade and in keeping markets open during the current global crisis have assumed a new urgency. Our shared efforts to boost aid for trade to help workers, farmers, and consumers engaged in trade will pay dividends in expanded opportunities, lower poverty, and higher growth.
Doubling the access limits means more financing, more possibility for the institution to provide resources to our membership. The second thing was to find the resources for that, and we have secured the tripling of our lending capacity. But at the same time, most of your countries were complaining, and probably sometime, maybe not always, but sometime rightly, in saying that the way we lend was too rigid and that the IMF needs to implement more flexibility. So that, I think, has been done, and the capacity we have today to take into account much more than in the past real political, historical situation of the countries, not only the macroeconomic figures, which of course are the core of our business, but also the environment of this macroeconomic situation is, I think, much more developed than it was in the past.
I see two challenges where concerted action is needed, especially from donors. First, a robust rate of real growth in aid for trade needs to be sustained and to be truly additional without detracting from aid for social and other sectors and purposes. ODA pledges already made, including those at G8 summits, must be met, if not augmented, to support low-income countries through this current crisis. And the G8 does have the opportunity later this week to resolve to follow through on its Gleneagles commitments of 2005 and to commit the Gleneagles scenarios to funding for them for scaled-up ODA to African countries. Secondly, aid for trade to low-income countries is growing faster than that to other groups of countries, but there's still more scope to target resources so that the poorest countries do receive the most aid for trade, and so that the current concentration of that assistance in only a few countries is reduced.
I am persuaded that the best way to build the capacity of these institutions is not to bypass them. It is to work with them and build the capacity over time, because there is no other alternative to those organizations. I've been asked several times, as you know, there was an African delegation at the G20 in London, but what did you bring back? My answer is, we brought back a lot of success. The IMF was given a lot of resources, and I want to thank Mr. Strauss-Kahn for the flexibilities he has indeed shown recently in response to many countries who have difficulties. I also want to thank many donors here who have allowed us to increase our level of budget support operations as the fund increases the balance of payment support. But it is clear, it is very clear, the next G20 must look again closely at the issues of low-income countries. They will not go away. They will not go away. And I think we need to implement what was decided in London, but at the same time look again at what low-income countries are doing to build up their potential and their capacity for resistance.
At the region's development bank, ADB is a natural catalyst agent for helping mobilize and channeling aid for trade effectively. This can be done initially in three ways. First, through increased lending for trade-related infrastructure at regional, sub-regional, and national levels. Second, by helping to coordinate the many participants in Aid for Trade as Secretariat for the newly created Regional Technical Group co-chaired by Cambodia and Japan. And third, by sharing cross-border experience and technical expertise on Aid for Trade activities through policy dialogue and studies.
Our region has been better prepared, as has been recognized by many, to face this crisis by the combination of larger amounts of reserves, sound macroeconomic policies, and a solid macroeconomic framework. However, the continuing contraction of exports, the widening of fiscal gaps, and the increasing difficulties in the access to finance are all contributing factors to the economic difficulties of our region. While initiatives such as Aid for Trade are critical, I also believe that the protection of the multilateral trading system is almost as important as just as paramount. Our countries need to be global players and integrate globally to expand trade and create prosperity. As we all know, the conclusion of the Doha round is imperative for our region and certainly for the future of the world trading system as a whole, now more than ever.
Others have already noted the importance of trade finance. I strongly welcome Director General Lamy's commitment to this issue and his efforts to systematically monitor and mobilize trade finance. Trade finance has become extremely scarce and, where it is available, more expensive. This is both because of global liquidity shortages and a general reassessment of counterparty risk concerning trade finance under the Bail II requirements. In turn, this may have further exacerbated the contraction of trade. Drawing on its close working relationships with local financial institutions, the EBRD has developed a trade financing program that promotes trade by overcoming trade credit counterparty risks between banks.
I would like to reiterate the overriding importance of IDB Group attaches to trade promotion, and at the same time express our readiness to cooperate with other international financial institutions and partners on aid for trade with the objective of scaling up trade-related infrastructure financing and capacity development in common member countries.
10 seconds of attention. Look to the sun.